We're starting off today with Detroit Lions news. What's going on with our franchise so far? We're really kicking in drive the offseason now with the draft over, so we're going to get into it. Brad Holmes approval rating, what is it right now? It's really high. We're going to get into that, what it means going forward. Is Brad Holmes cocky? Article came out from A to Z Sports. Want to give you my thoughts on that one. Should the Detroit Lions have taken the trade that we found out that could have happened in the draft? And we're going to talk about the offensive line, and should the Lions go ahead and sign pass rusher DeMarcus Walker? Before we start, question for the day here. Rank general manager Brad Holmes and compare to the rest of the GMs in the NFL. 1, if you think they're the best. 32, if you're a Packers fan. Let's go ahead and start with the approval rating of Brad Holmes, and we're going to start with what it looked like a long time ago. He started out, obviously, it was high, right? We didn't do so good in the beginning of his tenure because our team was butt cheeks. That has nothing to do with him, but right, 97, 98, 90, 87, 79. It got a little bit rough right there. 22, 95. You keep going on. And today, you're at 97% job approval rating. Poor Pride of Detroit. That's a very, very high rating. Detroit Lions fans are appreciative of Brad Holmes' work as general manager. He's done a phenomenal job acquiring talent from players such as Aiden Hutchinson, St. Brown, all the way to Sam Laporta. I expected his job approval to be really, really high because he's really, really good. Now, this is interesting, though. He banked on this draft of waiting for edge till round 6. He didn't really go too hard in free agency to this point for the pass rush position. Now we'll watch that approval rating continue. If the Lions, we get savage with injuries on the defensive line, or if we can't get to the quarterback, I think you'll see that dip a little bit. But he definitely banked on himself this offseason, and he is a very, very confident general manager. So rank him, the rest of the GMs. Where do you have Brad Holmes? 1, if you have him the best. 32, if you are a Packers fan. Let's go ahead and get to the next question here, because this came an article from A to Z Sports talking about, is Brad Holmes cocky? Is he a cocky individual? It just goes through the his tenure as Detroit Lion in regards to getting certain players and all of that. And Mike Payton says, I don't think he's feeling himself too much. I think he's a team that's just adapted to his approach. Go get the players you love and feel the best about, and not the position you need. The need is also going to be changing, and you'll never be able to get ahead of it. Now, I kind of do think Brad Holmes is cocky. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a good or a bad thing. I think he's very confident. But, wearing the jerseys, whether it be his jersey or years past, we've seen it, calling out reporters. I think he's just really confident in his approach. I think that what he is thinking in his head is, this franchise hasn't been good for a long time. Our approach is working. Why are reporters or fans or media getting upset? So we're going to fight back. So I think that's more or less what it is. With that said, I do think he's a humble individual all around for sure. But in this business, I think he believes his approach is correct. And let's look at facts. Let's look at his time that he has spent, right? You're seeing that teams now are drafting running backs early. You're seeing teams drafting offensive line, multiple, especially in this year's draft. You're seeing things change around the NFL, and I think it is the approach of what Brad Holmes has done. So I think he has a right to be a little bit cocky. I think he has a right to be overconfident, but you want to have that balance there. And we'll find out if he was too cocky for not getting the edge. That's what we're all waiting to see, right, is what's going to happen through this season, because you don't want to get to where you're too confident and you're just going to go against the grain to go against the grain. Just stay with your plan and fight back. I'm hoping that's the case. Now, a lot of people are upset about the potential trade down scenario. The Philadelphia Eagles released a video, and it talked about the Lions had an opportunity to trade back from 28 to 31. A lot of people are upset about it. Let's get into this really quick. So, Lions general manager turned down the Eagles trade offer the first round. The Eagles released on YouTube the video entitled 96 Hours Inside the Eagles Draft Room. From their official account, Roseman is seen coming off the phone asking any interest in moving back. Turning to his associates and saying Detroit just spoke to, they said no. This came to the heels of the Roseman looking for a trade move to try to select Alabama linebacker Jihad Campbell. He had calls on multiple teams and failed to deal with until eventually pulling the trade with the Chiefs with the 31st overall pick. They really wanted to get Jihad Campbell. We wanted to get their player. Howie Roseman was doing everything he could to get it. Am I mad about this trade? A lot of people are upset about it, a little bit sour about it. We could have got Tyleik Williams with that pick instead of the 28th pick. We could have got more from the trade. That's what the thought process is. Before I give you my answer, give me your answer. Would have you made the trade? T for trade, P for pass. Now, I don't know the details of the trade, but I wouldn't think it'd be too much. At the end of the day, when I think about this move, I'm not sour, butthurt, or anything. I don't care. You don't know where Tyleik Williams could have got picked. He could have picked at Kansas City. We don't know. Yes, we know about Jihad Campbell, that Philadelphia wanted to get him. Who cares about these little trades? If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. What we're missing on one player or a mid-round draft pick or a late, fifth-round draft pick or whatever. I don't even know what the trade is. But you get your player that you covet. They clearly coveted Williams. They wanted to give it. You don't get, if you truly want the player and if you feel like that's the final grade of the first-round picks, maybe that's what they had, you don't give it the trade up. You select your player if he's what you want. Would you trade back if we had Aiden Hutchinson at 2 and we could have got Kayvon Thibodeau or whatever? No, man. Just if you truly want to get your guy, stay with your pick, select your guy. I'm always about that. Not going to get mad that we didn't make the trade down scenario. Could we have gotten Tyleik Williams? It's possible, but look, Kansas City Chiefs liked him a lot. Rumor is they would have took him. So then you wouldn't have gotten it, right? So let's not get too upset about it. Next, we'll talk about should the Detroit Lions sign DeMarcus Walker, free agent. He did visit the Detroit Lions. The draft is over. We didn't have draft edge. Could he be a player to help the Lions? Well, we'll give you a remember of who he is. 6'4", 280 pounds. From his college was Florida State. Played for multiple teams. The Chicago Bears. 30 years old, pass rusher. He's just waiting simply to sign with another team. He'll get signed eventually. We just don't know who. What did he do last year? 25 solo tackles, 3.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions, of course. Doesn't really matter about that. Decent rotational pass rusher, in my opinion. Not bad. A guy that will give you depth on the defensive line. This is the idea if they truly do believe in Marcus Davenport, if they believe that he can hold down the fort for majority of the season, this would be an option. But I'm going to tell you what, when it comes to these pass rushers and what I'm looking for a guy who can be a little bit more of a difference maker than Walker. Now, look, if we can't get certain player, fine, backup option. I'm fine with getting DeMarcus Walker, but I would prefer to get Zadarius Smith and just bring him back to the Detroit Lions. It makes the most sense. We got the money, $42.8 million in cap space. I understand we got to pay Hutch. I understand contracts, but we can afford Zadarius Smith this year. We can afford a DeMarcus Walker this year. We have the money to do it. It will make the depth better. Let's try to get Zadarius Smith on this team. If it fails, okay, Walker is an option. Now, another option is just waiting for other teams to cut down to the 53. And you know Brad Holmes is going to be watching that. All teams do that. Watching who is going to be available to an upgrade. So maybe that's what they're waiting for. Maybe some of these free agent players don't want to go to training camp. Maybe they have offers from other teams, want to wait a little bit. Maybe they're waiting for injuries. We specifically don't know exactly, but there is players on the market to help this football team. Walker is one player that can do that. He is. We'll see what Brad Holmes does. I would like for the Lions to bring in another player. I'd like the depth to get better, but that is just me, and I am not Brad Holmes. I am myself. But what do you guys think? You're not Brad Holmes either. In the comments, would you bring in DeMarcus Walker? Why for yes and for no? Now let's go ahead and get to Tate Ratledge and Miles Frazier. Brad Holmes, he's got some interesting things to say about this, and I'm excited for this offensive line. He says, Hank, he'll cross-train all those guys, Lions general manager Brad Holmes said after the draft. So if they're only been at guard, they're going to put all the ball between their legs and see if they can get the snap. But again, Hank's not going to put somebody in tough position either, so he's going to be able to assess if they have the right makeup and mentality to communicate the skills at center. That's a big part just about being able to snap. I mean, you'll have all the elite communication skills, not just as a starter, but as a backup. Now, I love the idea of cross-training all over the offensive line, and even at center when you got players like Miles Frazier, you got Graham Glasgow, you got players that can be all over this offensive line. We literally just picked up multiple players in this draft. You got Giovanni Manu. It's important to have players that can play all over this line. And we got that right now. We do. Kayode Osika now I plays, I'd say, primary left guard. But you have Miles Frazier. You're going to have the ability to have him. You're going to have Frank Ragnow. Now, we don't know what's going on with Graham Glasgow, right? I think that he potentially could be released, but Tate Ratledge, he can, if he can create cross-train at the center position, it will be great for this offensive line going forward. And I think these actions are good because a lot of people are asking, what about the backup center? Well, it looks like we're going to have cross-train. One of these guys, or potentially both, could be the answer for the backup center role. If and I do think Graham Glasgow potentially is not going to be on this team, and that could really spell the end, too. If they're cross-training these guys, spells the end there. So give me your thoughts about the Lions news today. With that said, folks, adios.